Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to see you today. My name is Dustin Cormier. Welcome to How to Rock Astrology. Today, this is the second part of my Pluto in aspect to Saturn episode. That intro turned out to be very long, so I decided to split them into two. And this is going to constitute our actual reading of Pluto in aspect to Saturn from Pluto, The Evolutionary Journey of the Soul by Jeffrey Wolf Green. Now, this is, of course, a continuing part of a series. If you want to read more about what Pluto is in general, how to relate to Pluto, and the specific way that Jeffrey Wolf Green talks about it, emphasizes it, he talks about different layers and states of evolutionary progression in the individual soul. And he talks about how, with an aspect like this, just like every aspect, different people at different evolutionary stages will act in different ways and respond in different ways to an aspect like this. If they have not had many lifetimes of dealing with this lesson, or if they're just a very new soul and have not much experience in general with dealing with the pains and pressures of being a human on the material plane, then, this Saturn aspect will be much harder for an unevolved state person than someone who's evolved and who's already been dealing with spiritual and material pressures. So, to learn a bit more about that, check out the start of the series. Today in particular, we're talking about Pluto in aspect to Saturn, like I said. Now, before we start, I just want to speak to a little review of the last video. Essentially, the big picture here is that the person with natal Pluto in aspect to Saturn is going to be dealing with a huge lesson in their inherent sense, what is likely that they have an inherent sense of frustration and futility. Depending on how this aspect is fated to be aligned in regards to this person's earthly experience, you've either had a past life experience, which is bringing out this sense of frustration and futility, or there was a point in your childhood where you had a traumatic experience that caused you to have an internal emotional reaction to authority, to your own sense of authority and to authorities larger than yourself. In fact, you might have had a very easy, blissful childhood where you didn't have to deal with anything, where you were catered to. Maybe you were like the Buddha, like a rich prince who had all of their little duties and their things in their life accounted for and carried out for them. The Buddha was a prince, and his father had servants who would trim his toenails and brush his teeth, and he would just all stand and just he's just taken through the moments. He might as well have had the servants just hold him by the arms, take him around, and just do all of his duties as a rich prince without having to lift a finger. The parents, the authority, the father said, "Don't worry, I have this figured out for you. You just do what you need to do as a prince, which is your duty to just do nothing. It's all taken care of for you." Then one day the Buddha was out and he saw a sick man, he saw an aging man, and he saw a dead man. And he contemplated the nature of time and the fact that people die. And he said, what is the point of all this action that's being put forth through me, if I don't also make it have some relationship with difficulty, with challenge? If there's no challenge, then there's no meaning for it all for me. And, that prince, the Buddha in particular, threw himself out of paradise and threw himself fervently into the difficulties of the material world, of getting a hold of the mind, of meditating under the tree, letting go of attachments to the passions and the senses, letting go of attachment to the ego, to the personality, to the desire to have a status and to be on top of other people and to step on other people. He let go of all these attachments and the egoistic attachments to them, and then just started serving people purely out of his realization of the nature of nature being difficult sometimes. He had a sattvic attunement, where he understood that now challenges reap rewards, and I want to be a part of that. Now, you could either be like the Buddha and get to that realization yourself, or you could be like the majority of people, which is probably why you're here watching this video with me, where you are finding that you are having an unconscious grip on sheltering yourself from the need to act in the world, from the need to have authority, from the need to interact with authority, with the grisly survival nature of the material world and of physical reality, of being in a body, of getting other lovers as opposed to other guys or girls getting that lover, playing musical chairs. Saturn, I always have a metaphor for Saturn as being like a game of musical chairs. Only one person gets to sit in that chair, to sit in that throne, to get in the title, some kind of title. Even you being a brother or a sister in a family, having to fit in with everybody, having the responsibility of being nurtured through all your other siblings, but yet not feeling deserving of it. And then as you go along, you might feel you don't deserve any of these things, and you don't want the responsibility of the resources coming from your family. You don't want the responsibility, because if you take this energy from your father, if you take this nurturing energy from your mother, you know at some point that you're going to have to give it back, that you want to do your family proud, and all of these things. And you might feel right from the beginning like you don't deserve it, like you don't want it, like you don't want the energy coming in, because then you'll be obligated to do something with it. You don't want resources, because then you'll be obligated to do something with it. You don't want opportunity, because you might fail. And it's this frustration, this futility with all opportunity, this futility with anything, with action, with being in a body. Even it's a blessing and a privilege to be in a human body that can even breathe, that can even imagine anything, let alone lift a finger, let alone move its body around. And you might be in a place where you don't deserve to be in a body, where you don't want to get on top of your own animal impulses, of your own survival needs, and you might not want to, you might not feel worthy of it. This incarnation is going to force you to see the futility of your feelings of futility. Doesn't matter how futile it feels. Doesn't matter if you're going to feel like you're going to get a reward at the end of it all. At some point, you've just got to extend your hand and grab the apple on the tree and eat it, just like everybody else does. And to be an individual particle of the larger spiderwebbing network of forces that nature impresses upon you all the time. You have to be in the flow with this, whether you feel futile or not. And it's the confrontations in this life that are going to cause you to understand that. Ultimately, there's a deep-seated fear of being consumed or controlled by forces larger or more powerful than the individual, than yourself. This fear reflects a conflict between your personal authority and the larger authority manifested in the culture or of the parent and authority, of your teachers or of your lover. It's like the conflict is your sense of personal authority versus the larger authority that you're a part of. This larger authority originates in the source that created the individual at a mystical level, at the ultimate level. And it's your relationship with the ultimate that is going to get you in tune with this. It's your understanding of yourself as an individual being a part of some greater collective evolution, whether that's your own personal soul's evolution or whether that is the collective evolution of the world around you, which is trying to get on top of its own feet in a materialistic world sense. Saturn, when Saturn allows itself to be a transistor, a chess piece in the greater evolution of the world, where you sacrifice yourself to hold a position of power in order that the world can put energy and resources through you. If you're willing to do that on the material world it reflects in your capacity to be with the flow of nature, of energy, of authority, of evolutionary progression internally in your soul. And these are the themes that will be involved with Pluto in aspect to Saturn. So that was my general spiel. I wanted to just give a little review of our last video. Now, we are finally going to talk about Pluto in aspect to Saturn, coming from our reading of Pluto by Jeffrey Wolfgreen. So without further ado, I go with my own spiel about these things, but at some point we've just got to get down to it and get through the train, cabin by cabin, and do a little reading on Pluto in aspect to Saturn. Jeffrey Wolfgreen begins by saying that in general, Pluto in aspect to Saturn will promote the need in these individuals to actualize and realize their own authority, and to establish this authority within society. Pluto can correlate to the largest sociological role that any of us can play within the context of society. That's Pluto. When Pluto is an aspect to Saturn, the evolutionary desire and intent is to fulfill or assume that role, that musical chair that other people are also seeking to fulfill. This aspect promotes deep self-contemplation or reflection that leads to an awareness or knowledge of the individual's inherent capabilities. Therefore, also, this promotes a reflection and an awareness on the nature of the individual's inherent capacities, as well as their career or sociological role, through which personal authority can be established and projected. In the same way that we all need to be able to say, I did it. When we're a baby, we want to learn to crawl. We get up despite the muscular strangeness of our body and our limbs, despite the fact that gravity is pushing us down for the first time, we get up on our two legs and we become mobile because of the desire to go from point A to point B. The air, Saturn as the vessel of the Indriyas, the senses, going to where we sense that we need to go. Now, just as the baby getting on its 2 feet is for its own purpose in order to make itself better, so is our projection of our establishment of our role in society. Even though it's an established role where others can see it, us doing that is an internal desire to express what is essentially a sociological standard. In the same way that us walking, it's really for ourselves. We know we want to go and get that toy. Mom's on the other side of the hall saying, oh, come on, baby, get the keys. And the baby wants that toy and they become mobile and they start crawling. And they start to sense intrinsically. Kids just do this. There's a point where they just go in their head one day, they're 2 years old, and they say, you know what, screw this crawling crap. I just know that if I get up, I'm going to be able to get that toy even faster by walking. Now, this happens because they see adults walking. And the baby intuits that I can get on top of my own limited speed by doing what everyone else is doing. Applying my efforts to this social standard of a skill, which is walking, and making my way and walking. Now, in the same way that, again, this walking thing, it happens from within the child for the child's own desire. But ultimately, it is also a statement of them getting at the same speed as everybody else. In the same way, any role that we find in our world, that we establish in order to project our authority, it's for our own benefit, but we do have to play within the sociological system of musical chairs where someone else could get our job. We don't let them. We get that job instead of them because of our establishing and projecting our authority in the world. Sometimes sometimes there's enough space in the world where everyone can hop in a musical chair and everyone gets their own chair and gets to do their own thing. Sometimes, though, most cases, the material world is limited. There's only so much material, and we in our spirit need to have the social self-evolution in order to get on our own 2 feet and get what we want, despite the resistance from gravity and from others to not do that. The individual's capacities and role that they are looking to establish and deal with and to express this Pluto-Saturn karma through, the individual's capacities and role in the world are relative to the houses and signs that Pluto and Saturn are in, the aspects that they make to each other and to other planets, and by the natural, evolutionary, and karmic capacity of the individual with this aspect. So this is Jeffrey Wolf Green breaking down what are the details that are going to essentially give substance to this essential theme of establishing our authority amongst others. What's it going to come through is the sign and house of Pluto and Saturn, and the aspects between each other, as well as the aspects that other planets give to them. You know, Western astrologers are inclined to just see, oh, Pluto in aspect to Saturn, oh, it's bad. Pluto is big and heavy and bad, and Saturn's Pluto is heavy and bad. Really, though, it has to do with the health of Saturn, the positive planets and negative planets given to Saturn, as well as to Saturn's natal signs, its ruling signs, which is Capricorn and Aquarius, as well as the aspects to Pluto. All these things are going to determine whether this Pluto's magnification is going to go through a positively situated Saturn or not. Ultimately, though, once Saturn-Pluto individuals understand their capabilities, capacities, and the sociological role that they can play, they must also learn the means of actualizing these potentials as defined by their culture or society. It's the 9th house, of course, is what the 10th house stands on. Jupiter, our acceptance and realization of a sociological role that we can apply joyously based on our nature in the world. This is what our establishment of authority comes from. It comes from our role being inherent in us. In the same way that a king gets to be the king, not just by being the old king's son, but also by being a king internally through their Jupiter, their 9th house. That's their personal role. Then, once they feel that they are a king from within them, 9th house, then it's just a matter of proving it to the world. 10th house. Both of these are important. So once they learn the means of actualizing their potentials as defined by culture and society, then they will be able to express their own authority with respect to the capabilities that can be expressed through the career or sociological role that they will play. Essentially, Jupiter is the internal compulsion to be in the role. Saturn is the stabilization of the role. If you have a good Saturn, then you can stabilize constructively through thinking and understanding how the role works historically, where the role, how the field is in today's time, and how we can stabilize and manage it effectively in the long run. These are all Saturn things. Jupiter just says, that's what I want to do. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't know how well it's going to go, but this is what I'm pulled towards. Saturn, which allows that Jupiterian impulse to be refined and condensed into a diamond that everyone can universally appreciate. So, from an evolutionary point of view, the individual with Pluto in aspect to Saturn have and will be learning lessons relative to external authority and power. The culture or society itself is one source of external authority and power. Another source is the parent, who yields most authority and discipline within the family. That could be a mother or a father. Since Pluto, aspected to Saturn, also correlates to the individual's need to assert his or her own authority. The aspect between Saturn and Pluto will suggest how they have reacted to the need to express their own power and authority within the context of external power and authority. Right, so the nature of the aspect, whether it's stressful or, like a bad, ugly square, or if it's like a positive sort of like trine, as they say, can be generally tend to be positive, because these two planets are in the same element, typically in this case. Depending on how you define it, I'm a Vedic guy, so I would be inclined to say that the aspects that Saturn gives are different than the Western one, but I digress. Ultimately, if this is a positive aspect between Pluto and Saturn, then it'll express differently than it will with negative, stressful aspects. Ultimately, this suggests how the person has instinctively reacted in the past to their need to express personal authority within the context of external power and authority. Have you been too shy in the past or too incapable of dealing with establishing personal authority in the context of a larger authority? Those are what the stressful aspects are going to cause you to see and to have to get over in this incarnation. Whereas harmonious ones just show that this is something that you can learn to do very easily, but you will have painful experiences of bashing your head against reality, but you'll get a grip on the usefulness of applying your personal authority in an external authority. That's what happens when Pluto and Saturn are in a positive harmony. The experiences will still be painful, but the pain will much more easily enrich the person's experience because they don't react stressfully, right? So, the stressful aspects of Pluto and Saturn tend to promote a situation in which these individuals have challenged, rejected, or failed to understand the means of establishing their role, power, and authority within their culture. It also suggests a clash or conflict of wills with respect to one or both of the parents who attempted to discipline the individual or who expected him or her to conform to their standards of conduct, to the parents' standards of conduct. Because Saturn correlates to the phenomena of time and space, stressful aspects also suggests a problem with the discipline necessary to acquire the socially acceptable credentials that would allow the establishment of their role and authority. So Saturn correlates to the phenomena of time and space. And this shows that, stressful aspects means that this person has difficulty going through the slow, meticulous, painful process of going through each cabin in the train in order to get to the front of the train. They just want to get right to the front of the train. You want to be a guitarist, you have to work, kind of got to slave a little bit at some uncomfortable practicing experiences, just grinding it in. Find whatever way you've got to find to enjoy it. Push yourself into a way that you can enjoy the discipline of having to go through the time in order that you can have in your nervous muscle memory the ability to be a great guitarist. Can't just magically appear there one day. Can't just buy a book. Can't pay a teacher to just inject the information into your brain. You have to just slowly, diligently go through it. And in the same way, a stressful Pluto-Saturn aspect, or a stressful Saturn, which is an aspect to Pluto in any regard, that's how I would say it's in the Vedic sense. If you have Pluto aspecting Saturn and your Saturn is ill-placed with malefics, it's close to its debilitation or close to the first house, since Saturn has a hard time dealing with the phenomena of space and time in that sense, then the Pluto aspect the Pluto-Saturn aspect shows that the person has a problem with having the discipline necessary to acquire socially acceptable credentials that would allow the establishment of their role and their authority, which means going to school, or, you know, you might do something where you want to be an actor and you want to be a big-time actor in Hollywood, but you decide at some point to go and do porn or something like that. And now, because of what you've done there, for whatever, no judgment to people who get into porn or whatever. I'm a Scorpio and I get the whole thing. But, you know, it just might happen with this type of aspect that you get into porn or something that ruins your name in Hollywood for the type of films that you wanted to get into. Let's say you wanted to be a child actor or an actor in kids' movies, or you got an opportunity to play a huge role in the upcoming Grinch or Santa Claus movie or something like that. But then the producers go through and they find that you've been in porn. And they say it doesn't look good for us for a movie, for an actor who's going to be in a movie, this big epic opportunity where you're going to be in a child's movie. We don't want an actor who's been in porn to be in a movie teaching children these lessons. And so you don't get to do that, you know, because you didn't apply your desire to be an actor, your desire for greatness, slowly, diligently, in the sense, in a way that the cultural collective would accept the credentials that you applied yourself to. So that's a good example of what can kind of go on here, right? There's probably other examples I can think of, but let's just keep going with our reading. So the point is that if you have Pluto in a stressful, if you have Pluto in aspect to Saturn, especially with Saturn being ill-placed or this being a stressful aspect, then this kind of incapacity or obstruction to getting those credentials can happen. If you have a good enough Saturn, though, you'll still somehow get through it in a way that people can still respect you. Saturn-Pluto aspects demand that time be spent learning or preparing for the specific role that you ultimately want to play. To be that guitarist, to put in the practice, to actually get the skill to be the guitarist you want to be, or to whatever you want to be. The time factor also allows for the development of a socialized consciousness that learns how the system works and what the system or the field of study you're involving yourself in is based on. By developing a socialized consciousness, the individual will know how to integrate his or her own authority and role within the society. Because the stressful aspects suggest conflicts or problems with this process in the past, many of these individuals will come into this life with a deep sense of frustration and futility. The sense of frustration and futility is based upon previous life experiences of being denied or blocked from being able to actualize their ambitions, goals, desires, and sociological roles to the fullest possible extent. Something's happened in past lives where you've been squashed from your ability to actualize that ambition. Something happened where, let's say you're in a train. I gave an example of this. You're in a train and it crashed, and you are at the back of the train, and your daughter, you want to go and comfort your daughter at the front of the train. Now, in past lives, what you have to do is go diligently through each cabin, each step, each collective check in order for you to finally get to the stage that you want to be at the front of the train. What happened in past lives is that you tried to climb out, you got to the second cabin, and you knew that there was all this strife and that you had to go through all these cabins in order to get to the front of the train. So in past lives, you got to the second cabin and said, screw this, you know what? I'm just going to go out the window, I'm going to climb on top of the train, and I'm just going to run on top of all these cabins, to just run and skip them all, skip the steps, do some kind of trick to skip the steps. And because you did that in past lives, now, let's say maybe you tried to stick your hand out the window and you lost a limb, and that stopped you from being able to open the door. And now You can't, in those past lives, you were denied the ability to get to the front of the train. In the same way that this thing, being a porno actor in a past life, prevented you from being the top scale actor that you wanted to be. Whatever it was, something caused you to feel like you psychologically are not good enough, and you do not have something. You lack what you need. You lack the persistence. You lack the ability to go where you want to go and to get into the role that you want to be in. So the denial or blockage, whatever it is, this occurred because you did not adhere to the necessary methods or ways to actualize these needs as prescribed by society. You cheated somehow, went against the cultural collective, tried to get some sneaky way of actualizing the role that you wanted to become. I would almost say I'm almost inclined to see if Donald Trump has an aspect of Pluto to Saturn, because he didn't necessarily go through the same presidential thing that most presidents do. He kind of just got that way by a sort of money trick. But now that he's in the role, how long is he going to really stand, and has his reputation really going to look with everyone knowing that he skipped steps? You know, just as an example. I don't know. This isn't a political channel, so I digress. Thus, anyone with Pluto-Saturn aspects have an ongoing lesson to learn the proper methods in order to actualize their capabilities and needs to the fullest possible extent. This will involve engaging yourself with the world outside yourself, not just in this personal vacuum of greatness, but establishing your greatness and authority in the collective social pressure and the collective social spheres. So commonly, there's a resistance to this process, a resistance to, and a frustration, a feeling that it's futile for me to try and get a hold of my own body, my own mind, to get a hold of my relationship of my authority to others and authority to others. And the deep-seated basis of this prior refusal in past lives have caused this person to block themselves from slowly, patiently, diligently going through all the trains and all the cabins to get to that desired role. And they felt that they couldn't play the game fairly for some reason, because there's a Plutonian fear of being consumed or controlled by forces larger or more powerful than the individual. There's a desire to be consumed by that power, by the larger forces, by the authorities, by your parents, by whatever. And this fear reflects a conflict between personal authority and the larger authority as manifested in the culture or the apparent in authority. It's a conflict between your personal authority and the personal authority of dad or the boss or whatever it is that's caused you to feel like you're small and meek in this life. From an ultimate point of view, however, there's a bigger picture here that I've been trying to say from the start. From an ultimate point of view, this larger authority originates in the source that created the individual. The fear, however, is projected onto society. The individual says, oh, society is giving me this trouble. Society is giving me this pressure. Society is denying me and limiting me from being what I want to be. But the truth is that from an evolutionary point of view, the primary lesson is to learn how to submit, to conform, or to align the personal authority to the larger authority and the desire of the source. Society, your father, your lover that you're in relationship with, your friends, your colleagues, everyone is really just a illusory, reflective mirror of your confrontation with the larger authority of the source that is in yourself. They are a reflection of your relationship to the source within you. Any confrontation that a larger authority gives to you where you feel unconsciously like, oh, this thing I always do, or I'm not worthy of being equal or holding equal dignity in this situation, that is the authority of the source of the universe trying to get you to stand up in equal dignity with it. Telling you, what is your standing? If you're going to bow down cripplingly to this job, this father, this moment, it might as well be every eternal moment, because that's what you are and that's what you're doing. And the more you do that, the more the source is going to teach you where you are in the evolutionary scheme. Ultimately, everything you meet in reality is a symbol for where you are in your evolutionary progression. And all the confrontations with authority outside of yourself is just you confronting your need to face the authority within yourself. Now, others with a stressful aspect between Saturn and Pluto have succeeded in establishing their power and authority within society through the strength or force of their wills. This is where the soul is becoming individuated and says, you know what? I need to stand up for myself. I do have a personal authority within all these authorities outside of myself. And it's a dog-eat-dog world. And there's other people that are trying to get that musical chair before I do. So I'm going to step on whatever heads I got to step on in order to establish myself, in order to get a grip on things, in order that I can finally start giving out more energy than I took in. But I have to ravenously steal whatever I can steal in order to get myself established. And then I can give. Then I can be a tree with its own fruit. So this is more of the individual, this is the egotistical, Rajasic level of evolution. It's not necessarily unaware. The person we talked about beforehand is unaware, and they just let the authority push them around until they eventually snap and do something that causes them, in a volcanic, cathartic way, to get a hold of themselves. But by that point, they've already wasted a lot of energy. The individuated ego is that the second level of evolution. This is the type of person who has succeeded in the past in establishing their power and authority within society through the strength or force of their wills. But the means and methods used to achieve their ambitions and goals are commonly manipulative, ruthless, abusive, and underhanded. This is another common thing that happens with Pluto in aspect to Saturn. Such individuals have or will experience emotional blows when the foundations of their career or role are forcefully removed at some point. The degree of emotional shock experienced will be in direct proportion to the level of resistance to changing their ways, or to the degree they defend their social position and authority. That's the amount of emotional shock that they will experience when authority is challenging their ways of doing things. In either case, these individuals, no matter what their evolutionary state, are continuing to learn, especially with the stressful aspects. The Pluto-Saturn person is learning how to accept the responsibility for their own actions, especially those with Saturn ill-aspected, close to debilitation, close to the first house, according to Vedic astrology. Pluto, Saturn individuals with stressful Saturn aspects are continuing to learn how to accept the responsibility for their own actions. For the very unevolved person, These types face continuing lessons relative to self-determination, which is linked with an awareness of their capacities and the appropriate and required ways to actualize those capabilities within their social role or career. Thus, the individual's feelings of frustration are directly based on their own actions when those actions failed to conform to what had to be done to realize their goals. The evolutionary antidote here is to do what is required of them to realize their capabilities in a self-determined way, in a way where you are getting a hold of it. Even if you're failing, just getting a grip on the energy, getting a grip on the slippery fish is the most important part, to be engaged and involved with it. And there will be some damage. Sometimes you'll be embarrassed at being too abusive or authoritarian with this or that. But the point is that you're starting to see yourself in context with it all. That's the unaware, unevolved state coming into self-reflection and sense of self-ego. Now, once the ego starts developing in the second case, self-determination has been highly developed in relation to realizing one's ambitions, goals, and capabilities. The self is now involving itself. This is when the evolutionary stage is coming to crystallize. They've had enough humiliating experiences of authority acting over top of them in past lives that now they're starting to sense that they need to be in the stream of authority, and so they're starting to individuate. They've applied great willfulness in relating to their ambitions and their goals and their capabilities. Yet, the means used to actualize your potentials have been negative in this, especially in the stressful Saturn aspects, where Pluto is funneling an ill-aspected Saturn, and it's just wasting energy by this extreme emotional security, willfulness to succeed. Thus, these types must learn how to accept the responsibility for their own actions when the necessary confrontations, blows, or shocks of removal occur, and to determine in themselves to correct their previous errors. This is what needs to be done with this evolving state of Saturn. Once you start applying yourself willfully to your need to get on top of your own reality, you're going to accept the waste and the wrong actions applied there. And you have to accept when your emotional security caused you to grip willfully on something that has now become obsolete and is wasting energy. With stressful aspects, the understanding of the limits of personal and social power can be difficult to achieve. When am I supposed to be willful and mean, and when am I supposed to be passive and receptive? And when am I allowed to, it's like when the boss comes, or when a police officer comes along and, it's like you're driving and there's like a test to make sure you haven't been drinking or anything like that. And the cop rolls down your window, says, "Hello there, sir. This is a scheduled test just to make sure that you haven't been drinking." And now you might not have done anything, but if you've got Pluto in a bad aspect to Saturn, you could just be like, "Oh, okay, what do I do? Oh, what's the problem?" And then the person in authority says, "Why are you so nervous? Is there a problem?" And then they'll check to see that if you've done the breathalyzer, and then they'll check, and they might end up saying, "Look, so you don't have alcohol in your breath, but I think you're stoned on something, so we're going to put you in the precinct." And you're like, "But this isn't fair, I haven't done anything." But it's your reaction to the situation that's getting you into trouble, right? So the understanding of the limits of, like you might even say to that cop in that moment, like, "You cocksucker, you friggin' pig. How can you just, what is it, because I got long hair? Or what is it, because I'm stressed, I'm at the end of the day? What, man, what is it? What is it about me?" And the cop is like, "Look, man, you're giving me too much trouble here. Like, don't take it personally, but I'm just taking you in, It's because you weren't dealing with that authority with detachment that caused you to cause more unnecessary emotional crap than was actually there, right? So understanding that you have a limit. You are a civilian, and you need to go through those checks because the society, the culture, the collective people around you understand that it's good for us to check that drivers haven't been having any drinks on Christmas. You know, it's Christmas night and everyone's going home, and our community has agreed that we're going to pay money to make the cops check to make sure no one's been drinking and driving so that the kids walking around Christmas caroling don't get hit by a car. That's our collective agreement. Now, when you come up and it's your time to talk to the cop about this thing or to be confronted by authority with this thing, you are a limited person, and you have to understand that, you know, maybe you've been getting on top of this Pluto-Saturn thing and you've been applying your will at your job and you're really mean, and now all of your employees are listening to you because you've gotten that place. This is a part of you learning the balance of Pluto and Saturn. But now you take that willfulness and you get all this edge from your boss telling you what to do and you telling your subordinates what to do. You meet this cop on the road who's just doing what his community has told him to do, which your tax money and your agreements in that community, you've told them to do. This is what your thing is. This is a positive thing, but you're meeting it with you're stuck in the authority, the grip on the authority that you're applying to your employees. You're stuck delegating authority. Now with this cop, you're trying to delegate authority to this cop, but he's on top of you, delegating authority to you. And you need to let go of your resistance to that. This is the kind of struggle that will happen with stressful aspects of Pluto to Saturn. Ultimately, emotional shocks and challenges delivered by others in positions of power and authority will serve to make these limitations evident. Right? Now, individuals with non-stressful aspects between Pluto and Saturn, and in the Vedic sense, those with Pluto an aspect to Saturn, where Saturn is positively aspected, close to exaltation, close to the 7th house, where it has Digbala strength, and being in positive aspect to its friends Venus and Mercury especially, as well in certain ways as the benefic moon. You know, all of these positive aspects to Saturn, which gives Saturn the grip and the strength to apply patiently and diligently its resources and its psychological faculties to the Plutonian desire to get a grip on authority. This is a Saturn that can gain through humbleness and through understanding that work is work is work, and this is the nature of reality, and you don't take it personally. This suggests, when you have a non-stressful aspect of Saturn and Pluto, it suggests that an understanding of the appropriate methods and ways to actualize one's capabilities and roles within society, they're being learned and they're being gripped relatively easily. Because the nature of Pluto in whatever sign it's in is in a positive relationship with whatever the nature of Saturn by its sign and house is. The non-stressful aspects of Pluto and Saturn convey an awareness of the appropriate role and also a natural understanding of the limits of that role, right? They also convey an understanding of the limits of personal power and authority, where you can just go and you'll hear the authoritative directive from your boss, and it's still painful, it still sucks, still makes you feel like you are a cog, you're just another number to your boss. But when you give it, but you don't take it too personally. So this is just the nature of the grind of reality that sculpts character. And when you delegate your authority to your employees that are underneath you, you also don't do it you do it with a detached emotionality. So that you can hang out with them at the end of the job and say, hey, so I'm not your boss anymore. Now I'm your friend. Would you like a drink? We don't have to take any of that crap personally, right? And then you can go to that cop You can drive along and the cop is telling you that you can't be drinking. We need to do a breath test. And you go, okay, this is the nature of reality. Let's do it. You can accept all these being on top and being below authority. And it's still a grind. It's still a persistent feeling of Saturn. But things are aligned so that the elements of this lesson go smoothly with a non-stressful aspect. So such individuals will commonly understand the amount of time necessary to acquire the credentials that lead to the fulfillment and realization of their sociological role. And they will naturally prepare for the role that's being set for them in life by creating a solid foundation upon which the role or career is established. They will positively take the time to get all the necessary checks, go through all the necessary experiences in order to be great and to stand out in the field that they're ultimately going to apply themselves to. In addition, they will also take their duties and responsibilities seriously. All aspects between Pluto and Saturn contain the potential for leadership ability. The level of leadership will be determined by the individual's karmic and evolutionary conditions. Individuals with non-stressful aspects will accept and understand the obligations and responsibilities that go along with the leadership position or role that they are fulfilling. It's like they are willing to bend and blend themselves, to be a community leader so that, they might find themselves being a very sexual person who enjoys being in an open relationship with many different people, but who still wants to be a community leader, teaching the people how to satisfy themselves and to be endeared and to teach children how to do the proper thing, And if they've got a good Saturn, then they won't let their personal individual personality deny or obstruct the door to establishing their career and their role. And they'll even allow also their personal, there will be some sacrifice with Saturn, especially with Pluto here. You're bound to sacrifice something. But ultimately, if it's well placed, it will be satisfying for you to sacrifice that polyamorous, that whatever thing, so that that's not a huge reputation. That's not a big part of your reputation. It's a personal thing that you enjoy outside of your personal career, and it won't obstruct your personal career. So they will do the things that they need to do in order to have the credentials and the reputation and the understanding from others that they deserve that leadership role in whatever they are getting to. These individuals will also be able to accept and acknowledge the leadership abilities of others without taking it personally. In addition, they will be able to recognize and encourage the development of the natural capabilities of others and not feel threatened by the authority or position of others. So really, when positively placed, the Pluto and Saturn aspects are flipped on their head so that the person readily goes through the experiences that give them a reason to understand how useful it is when you can be humble and when you can be transpersonal in the delegation of authority in a group project. So that you will give directive without personality in it, and you will take directive without personality in it. So, hearkening back to the stressful aspects, those with the stressful aspects may not take their responsibilities and duties seriously. Rather, they may be more concerned with the position itself and the maintenance of that role. This focus can promote an ultimate downfall if their duties and responsibilities are neglected or abused. These individuals may recognize the capabilities of others, yet feel threatened by them. Accordingly, they can act to suppress or undermine others in order to maintain their own positions. Those who have been or are blocked from being able to actualize their capacities to the fullest extent must learn how to reflect honestly upon themselves in order to determine the reasons and dynamics that have created this situation. In this way, they can become responsible for themselves and make the changes required to remove the blocks instead of painfully focusing all of your intention and energy on how hateful you are that this or this or this or this person did this or this or this or this to stop your progress. Ultimately, you'll stop making excuses due to seeing the futility of making excuses from the stressful aspect of all this emotional energy wasted on being regretful about the fact that you never finally just took it upon yourself to establish that authority and take the time to get the credentials that would give you the respect that you deserve. And ultimately, you might get that if, despite the fact of the stressful aspect, Saturn still has positive things that can help it get through the morass of this harsh aspect, like Venus being in trine to it, or Mercury being in trine to Saturn. Those are probably the two best helpers for Saturn. But regardless of the approach or attitude assumed by the Saturn-Pluto individual, all of them have the intrinsic ability to reformulate, eliminate, or regenerate outmoded or stagnating dynamics or structures that are preventing further growth in themselves as well as in the collective. It's this painful experience of things that don't work will give the individual the sense of that in themselves, as well as being a revolutionizer for those things in the greater sphere. Because not only is Pluto affecting your Saturn, but your Saturn is also affecting the Pluto of the world, the looming forces outside of yourself. So they can reformulate, eliminate, or regenerate outmoded or stagnating dynamics or structures, preventing further growth. Eventually. This ability can be projected outward to make changes in their work or actions, or it can be internally focused in order to structurally change the orientation and parameters of their consciousness. Saturn correlates to organization and definition. Every inner dynamic contributes to the internal organization and definition of our personal identity. Every outer dynamic contributes to the organization and definition of a society, culture, or career, and to the totality of all forces as defined in a particular way at any point in time, reality. With Pluto linked to Saturn, the cycles of catharsis and metamorphic structural change will necessarily occur when evolutionary growth and development are blocked because of a dynamic or a combination of dynamics that are preventing necessary growth. This change will occur both within an individual and to the external conditions of reality, individually and collectively. The stressful aspects promote cataclysmic change in varying degrees of intensity, and the non-stressful aspects promote progressive, steady, evolutionary change. In summary, then, Pluto by house, sign, and aspect represents the most significant sociological role an individual can play. And Saturn by house, sign, and aspect will suggest the appropriate means, methods, and ways necessary to accomplish and actualize Pluto's sociological role. The aspect between the two will correlate to how it has been or will be done in this life. It's a very interesting description of Pluto and its house sign and aspects to Pluto, representing the most significant sociological role that we can play as an individual. what we are as an individual in the context of the greater gear work that is our place in that field of study, in that field of leadership, in that field of activity that we are obliged to fulfill and to be a part of, in a sense as an authority and as a primary shaker mover in that thing. It's Pluto is going to describe what it is. Saturn really shows our relationship to it and our developing relationship to our place as an individual within that Plutonian power. So, that was a lot, ladies and gentlemen. We're an hour in, so I think I should, we're done with our reading today, so I think we're going to call it one for now. I hope that this is helping you folks to get a grip on what you are in relationship to the world and what the world is in relationship to you. Ultimately, we are always somewhere in the middle of this continuing dialogue. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Feel free to make some comments. Let's get a little thread going on to see how we all deal with this energy and see if we can all help each other to get an understanding of it. It's part of what I'm trying to promote on my channel. So feel free to leave a comment, be a part of the community, ask some questions, and we'll see if we can all help each other through this craziness that is Saturn in all of us, and Pluto as well. I'm Dustin Cormier for How to Rock Astrology. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I hope you guys enjoy my channel in general. Feel free to subscribe, leave a comment, and drop a like if you enjoyed it. And yeah, I'd always recommend to subscribe if you enjoyed, because a subscription means that you'll be alerted whenever I've got more videos like this coming out. So feel free to join me if you feel like being a part of that. As I said, this is How to Rock Astrology. Keep your eyes on the skies, folks, because I got more stuff coming out soon. Let's all keep our torch light burning as we continue learning on the eternal relationship of ourselves with eternal self-knowledge through astrology. Peace and love, folks.